Hey, this is Ben Weiss creating my final report for the Capstone project. So it's called an uncommon solution to a common problem. Now, what is this common problem? The problem: governments all over the world are facing a financial crisis regarding how they are going to fund the retirement of the elderly. Now, as people get older, they're not able to work, because the body goes wrong, joints go bad, that kind of stuff. So, it started in the Great Depression in the United States, and pension programs started as early as in the German chancellorship in the late 19th century. Now, the idea of these programs is to provide money for the elderly so they could survive and live, and it's usually paid for by tax dollars and the current worker or the retirement Social Security pension program, or whatever you want to call it. Now, we're facing some problems. The United States Social Security Fund is facing insolvency as early as the 2030s. China is implementing cuts to its retirement program. Multiple European countries are facing insolvency for their pension programs. And Hong Kong has its elderly living in inhumane conditions. Now, Hong Kong, they kind of have like a culture of self-reliance. So they're less likely to have people reliant on the government, and are more likely to have austerity measures preventing government from funding retirement programs. And these are citations from, we have Biogonese that talks about the European program. We have, this one talks about China, Li Shangen at Singapore Economic Review, that talks about the Chinese program. And we also have one in Social Security. This one's a European one, Mishiva Cristina, another European one, and we have Ken Tashino, who talks about the Social Security, how that's going downhill lately, and how that's going to be facing insolvencies in the 1930s. Or no, sorry, 2030s, I should say. Alright? So the root cause of the problem: people are living a longer lifespan because modern medicine makes it possible to survive longer when ill with multiple ailments that come with aging. Stuff like arthritis. We now have medicines that keep people, like usually used to be a diabetes, could have been a death sentence. Now we created insulin that helps people survive, and we have all kinds of drugs that help people with heart conditions. These heart conditions have been death sentences a while ago. A lot of these people with these ailments can't go to work. They're sick. They're usually older people, and so we have to use tax dollars. People having less children. If you have less children, you're going to have less young people to work and pay taxes. So the longer the lifespan, a smaller amount of use results in a smaller workforce, smaller worker to retiree ratio, thus burdening the average worker more elderly to support. We went from a 20-to-1 ratio in the 1930s when FDR implemented Social Security to a 4-to-1 ratio in 2020 in the USA, and that's quoted from the Social Security article that I mentioned earlier from the Word document. I commonly propose solutions. Now, I'm sure a lot of you watch Democrats and Republicans debate, and they always talk about taxing the rich, cutting Social Security, raising the age, and nothing ever happens because half the nation's always against it. Now, problems with the proposed solutions: more taxes will put more strain on an already overburdened economy. The elderly are barely financially surviving. Any cuts could put millions in non-livable conditions. So, in one of the articles I quoted there, it talks about how 40% of people on Social Security is the number one source of income. 60% say they can't live without Social Security. So we're talking about millions of people here, just in the USA alone. Alright, so we need to come up with a better solution. We really have no choice. So what's the root cause of this whole crisis? It's aging. So we need to concentrate on prolonging the health span instead of lifespan. What do I mean by health span? I mean the amount of years that someone's youthful and healthy enough to work without his joints going bad, about him losing his mind, his memory, that kind of stuff. So we talk about being younger for longer. Some people say like 40 is the new 50 and stuff. Let's make 80 the new 30. Imagine if we could do that with modern medicine. Then we could raise the retirement age to 130, and no one will starve, and the elderly will be fine, and at the same time have a lot more workers paying into the system. So this will enable. But what do you mean by lifespan? Lifespan is pretty much, you have a guy who could barely move, he's a vegetable, and we have all these machines connected to him. We help him survive a bit longer, but the guy is not really living life. I mean, we're prolonging his lifespan, but not his health span. So this will enable workers to work longer, thus contributing more money to support the government and current retirees. Alright, so how do we fund this? Everything costs money. If we're going to fund a bunch of scientists to cure aging, well, first you have to declare aging to be a disease, and this will create the opportunity for government for public funding, because if something's not a disease, not acknowledged to be a disease, then the government won't be funding it because, well, it's not a disease. Well, why don't we think it's a disease? Because pretty much every organism in the world ages. There are a few that don't, and I do mention that in my capstone project, but yeah, we should. There's no reason we shouldn't look at it as a disease. We direct resources that go towards side effects of aging, Alzheimer's and heart disease, treating aging itself. Like how many people do you know in the 30s that get Alzheimer's and heart disease? Not that many. If we were to treat aging itself, we would have barely anyone with Alzheimer's or heart disease. And if he has Alzheimer's, probably prion-based and not age-related. So reform the FDA and other regulatory bodies that create unnecessary roadblocks to research or cure. So we saw with the vaccines for COVID, and once we removed and reformed the FDA, they came up with a vaccine within 6 months to a year. Usually this would take 20 years to create, but just by reforming the FDA, we saw how powerful it can be to create a new medicine and a new technology. So what are the current treatments for aging that are proven? Fasting, people who fast, rats who fast, they could double their lifespan. People who fast, they definitely live a lot longer. Exercise, no explanation needed for that. Healthier diets, doctors are always telling you to eat healthier. Supplements like resveratrol and NMN. And by the way, I get this information from David Sinclair's book, which is based off of his research it's called Lifespan by David Sinclair. It was written in 2019. Resveratrol is only effective when taken with a fat, because it's fat soluble. There are studies that show resveratrol is not effective. Those are not done with fat. So those are just drinking with water, so there's no fat to help digest it. His research shows that if you were to eat off a fat, you'd be able to digest it properly, so it would work. There's NMN. There was a study done that shows that NMN is reduced the biological age by about 2 years. It was done with 10 people. More studies will be needed. So it's a current treatment, but it's not 100% proven yet. There's more studies needed. There's microstress in the body, hot and cold therapy. Theory goes that, again, this is addressed by David Sinclair in his book, that when our body experiences hunger, extreme cold conditions, it will naturally repair itself so it could survive. So that's all good for aging. So future cures for aging, stuff that's in the works right now in the FDA. Treatment for senescent cells, otherwise known as zombie cells. As we age, we have a bunch of useless cells in our body that don't stop dividing. Instead, they send out useless signals throughout the whole body. It causes inflammation, and studies show that once we treat these senescent cells, we could prolong life. And I believe, we could pull up the name of the study. There we go. Yang Gali. This was done, in the Journal of Cell and Bioscience, that talks about senescent cells. Reprogramming the epigenome. This is addressed by David Sinclair. He was able to regenerate spines and the optical cords, stuff in rats, stuff that was thought to be impossible. Pretty much he reprogrammed their epigenomes, making them so young that they're almost like a fetus-like state. It's the youngest a cell could possibly be. When someone's a fetus, you can regrow limbs and do all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's pretty much how you cured these rats. So it has been done. Figure out more ways to microstress the body. Right now we know there's a hot and cold therapy. There's exercise technically is a microstress, and now we're also saying teas. What's so good about teas? Teas are grown in stress environments, and if you drink teas, you're drinking the stress chemicals of plants that naturally microstress the body, which is something in research. So I'm not going to quote it yet because not enough research papers done on it. It's just in the hypothesis stage. This is addressed by David Sinclair in the Joe Rogan podcast number 1234. Discovering more molecules that can prolong life. Again, we talk about resveratrol, talk about NMN. David Sinclair talks about in his personal podcast another supplement called spermidine, which may increase the lifespan. And these are my references, and the source of the images is Google Images. So that's my report, and thank you, and I hope I educated you on creating a better future.